Hey guys, tonight we delve into the mists of ancient China, to a place that lay sleeping for millennia, guarding secrets that still make our modern eyebrows do a little dance. We're journeying to Sanxingdui, a name that might sound like a new brand of instant noodles, but trust me, it's a place where history decided to get seriously weird and wonderful. Imagine yourself, if you will, in a sleepy corner of Sichuan province, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the promise of a rice harvest. It's a land of vibrant greens and winding rivers, a place where the past is not so much buried as it is just temporarily misplaced. You're surrounded by fields stretching out like a rumpled green quilt, the kind of landscape that hums with a quiet, ancient energy. We're going to be unearthing some truly bizarre bronze faces and golden treasures that have left experts scratching their heads and wondering if our ancestors knew things or saw things that we've long forgotten. And let's be honest, given the state of ancient healthcare and the general lack of, shall we say, workplace safety regulations, you probably wouldn't survive long enough back then to witness these artifacts being crafted, let alone puzzle over their meaning with us tonight. Frankly, your chances of surviving long enough back then to even see these bronzes being made, let alone understand them, would have been laughably slim. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really does help the channel, and it makes my digital cat purr with contentment. And while you're at it, why not drop your location and local time in the comments below? It's always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from, creating our own little global campfire for these bedtime tales. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the spring of 1929 near the Yangtze River in Sichuan, China. The air is mild, carrying the scent of newly turned soil and the distant calls of birds. You are Yan Dao Cheng, a local farmer, and today, like many other days, you're working your land, perhaps dredging a ditch or preparing a new patch for planting. The work is hard. Your back aches, and your hands are calloused from the rhythm of agricultural life that has defined this region for countless generations. You're not thinking about lost civilizations or ancient mysteries. Your mind is on the weather, the crops, the simple, pressing needs of daily existence. The sun beats down, and you pause to wipe a bead of sweat from your brow, your gaze sweeping across the familiar landscape. It's just another day, or so it seems. As you guide your simple tools through the earth, you feel a resistance, a dull thud that's different from hitting a stubborn root or a common stone. Curiosity, that ever-present human itch, makes you put down your tools and investigate. You kneel, digging with your hands, the cool soil yielding under your fingers, and then you see it, a glint of something smooth, something polished, something undeniably out of place in this humble field. It's not the rough texture of a field stone. This is different. This is special. Carefully, you unearth a piece of worked jade, its surface cool to the touch, its color a deep, alluring green. Your heart gives a little flutter. Jade, in Chinese culture, has always been more than just a pretty stone. It's a symbol of purity, nobility, and immortality. Finding a piece, let alone a cache of it, is no small thing. You continue to dig, your earlier fatigue forgotten, replaced by a rising excitement. More pieces emerge, discs, buy rings, and various other ceremonial forms, each one exquisitely crafted. These aren't rough, unworked minerals. They are artifacts, shaped by skilled hands thousands of years ago. This is a mainstream historical fact. The initial discovery at Sanxingdui truly began this way, with a farmer named Yan Dao Cheng, or sometimes his son Yan Qingbao is credited alongside him. stumbling upon a significant hoard of jade and stone artifacts while clearing a well or a sewage ditch near their home. It was a moment of pure serendipity that would eventually rewrite a significant chapter of Chinese Bronze Age history. Imagine the scene: you, a simple farmer, now holding objects of incredible antiquity and beauty. What do? There's no museum hotline to call, no university archaeology department just down the road. In 1929, this part of China was relatively isolated, and the scientific study of archaeology was still in its nascent stages in the country. You'd probably show them to your family, then perhaps to the village elders. Whispers would spread. Maybe some local antiquarian or a collector might hear of it. It's said that Yan and his family, understandably, tried to keep their discovery somewhat quiet at first, perhaps selling a few pieces here and there. It's a bit like finding a pirate treasure chest in your backyard. You're thrilled, a bit scared, and definitely wondering if you should call a historian or just buy a slightly bigger tractor. The full significance of your find isn't immediately apparent, not even to those who might have had some knowledge of Chinese antiquities. The style of these jades is subtly different, hinting at something unknown. For several years, these initial discoveries remained somewhat localized curiosities. A few private collectors and local officials acquired some pieces, but there was no widespread understanding of their origin or importance. It's a quirky tidbit that some of these early finds, before their true archaeological value was grasped by the wider world, might have been regarded more as isolated curios or even powerful talismans by those who came across them, their deeper historical narrative temporarily obscured. Think of it: an object that will one day sit in a climate-controlled museum case might first have served as a very impressive paperweight for a local dignitary. The ground beneath your feet, this patch of Sichuan, has been fertile for millennia, not just for rice, but for secrets. You've just scratched the surface, pulled back the first corner of a veil that has hidden a civilization lost to time. The jades you've found are beautiful, but they are merely an overture. The grand opera of Sanxingdui, with its astonishing bronzes and golden artifacts, still lies sleeping, waiting for another turn of the spade, another curious mind. Archaeologists and historians still argue whether these earliest pieces found in 1929 directly hinted at the full, unique scope of the Sanxingdui culture as we now understand it, or if they were initially perceived as perhaps unusual, but not entirely disconnected outliers of other known ancient Chinese traditions from the Central Plains. The truth is, nothing quite like what was to come had ever been seen before. This initial accidental breach was just the first whisper of a very loud, very strange, and very compelling story from the distant past. A story that would challenge everything known about early Chinese civilization. You, standing there with jade in your hands, are at the very beginning of that revelation. You hold on to that image of the farmer, Yan Dao Cheng, cradling those ancient jades, the first tangible whispers from a forgotten world. Decades pass after that initial 1929 discovery. Decades. Think about that for a moment. The world outside that sleepy Sichuan corner goes through immense upheaval. Wars, revolutions, the dawn of the nuclear age, men walking on the moon, while Sanxingdui, for the most part, slumbers on. There were, of course, some intermittent archaeological investigations in the vicinity, small-scale surveys and minor excavations. Some more jades and pottery pieces surfaced, enough to keep a flicker of academic interest alive, enough for a few scholars to suspect there was something more to this Sanxingdui site than just a lucky farmer's find. But it was like knowing there's a crumb of cake on the table when a whole 10-tier wedding cake is actually hidden under a tablecloth just waiting for a gust of wind. Or, in this case, a rather determined group of brickmakers. Fast forward with me now, if you will, to the summer of 1986. The air is hot and humid, the kind that makes you feel like you're swimming rather than walking. You're no longer a farmer dredging a ditch. Instead, imagine yourself as one of the workers at a local brickyard on the outskirts of Guanghan City, near the Sanxingdui site. Your job is to excavate clay, the raw material for bricks. It's dusty, repetitive work. The machines groan, the earth yields, and the primary concern is meeting the day's quota. Ancient history is probably the furthest thing from your mind. You're more likely wondering if the canteen will serve something decent for lunch, or if you remembered to bring enough water. Then, much like that day in 1929, a tool strikes something that isn't just clay or common rock. There's a clink, a thud, a change in texture. Work stops. Shovels give way to curious hands. What you and your fellow workers stumble upon isn't just a few scattered relics this time. Oh no, this is different. This is monumental. You've breached the edge of what archaeologists would soon designate as pit number 1. It's a rectangular pit, deliberately dug, and it's packed, absolutely crammed, with an astonishing array of objects. Word spreads like wildfire, far quicker than it did in 1929, thanks to slightly more modern communication. Perhaps someone ran to the nearest telephone. A concept that would have been science fiction to Farmer Yan. This time, the professionals, the archaeologists, arrive on the scene with a sense of urgency, and just a short while later, a second pit. Pit number 2 is discovered nearby, equally laden with treasures. Now, you need to understand, these weren't graves or tombs in the traditional sense. There were no grand sarcophagi, no skeletal remains of kings or queens laid out in state. These were something else entirely, sacrificial pits. This is a crucial mainstream historical fact. In July and August of 1986, these 2 large, intentionally created pits were unearthed, filled with thousands of artifacts primarily dating to the late Shang dynasty period, roughly the 12th to 11th centuries BCE, and the contents. It was as if an entire civilization had decided to throw its most precious, most sacred, and frankly, most bizarre belongings into a couple of holes in the ground. Imagine peering over the edge of one of these pits as the archaeologists meticulously begin their work. The sheer density of objects is staggering. There are bronze heads with strange, serene smiles and impossibly large ears. There are fragments of gigantic bronze masks, some with those famously protruding, almost telescopic eyes. There are ceremonial jade blades, or zhang, intricately carved. There are vast quantities of elephant tusks, hundreds of them, laid carefully amidst the other items. There are bronze vessels, pottery, gold objects, including what appeared to be a golden sheath or staff, and even remnants of silk. It's an overwhelming hoard, a jumbled treasure chest of a lost world. It's like someone raided a divine lost and found, then decided to bury it all with extreme prejudice. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Many of these priceless objects hadn't just been placed in the pits. They had been deliberately broken, smashed, or even burned before burial. Beautiful bronze statues were found in pieces. Exquisite jades were shattered. The magnificent elephant tusks often showed signs of burning. This wasn't accidental damage from the passage of time or the weight of the earth. This was intentional. The people of Sanxingdui, whoever they were, had gone to great lengths to ritually decommission these items. It's as if they were performing a massive, very dramatic spring cleaning of their most sacred possessions. Except, instead of a garage sale, they opted for a bonfire and a burial. The quirky tidbit here is to just picture the sheer, unadulterated shock of those brickyard workers. One moment you're digging for mundane brick clay, probably grumbling about the heat, and the next, your shovel uncovers a face, A bronze face, 3 feet tall, with golden eyes staring back at you from the earth. You'd be forgiven for thinking you'd accidentally dug a hole all the way to some mythical underworld, or at the very least, stumbled upon the props department for an ancient alien movie. I wouldn't be surprised if someone immediately suggested it was a sign to switch careers, or at least take a very long lunch break. The discovery of these 2 pits in 1986 transformed Sanxingdui from a site of regional curiosity into one of global archaeological importance almost overnight. The artifacts were unlike anything previously found in China, or indeed anywhere else. They hinted at a powerful, artistically sophisticated Bronze Age culture that had flourished in the Sichuan basin, apparently developing in relative isolation from the well-known Shang dynasty centers of the Central Plains. And the nature of these pits, these caches of deliberately destroyed treasures, opened up a universe of questions. Why would a civilization destroy its most valuable objects? What kind of rituals demanded such dramatic offerings? The precise nature and purpose of these sacrificial pits, whether they were for appeasing angry gods after a catastrophe, a ritual interring of a conquered people's sacred items, a solemn farewell to old deities as new beliefs took hold, or perhaps a way to ritually decommission sacred objects at a time of societal crisis or transformation, remains a subject of intense discussion among scholars. Each theory has its proponents. Each attempts to unravel the silent story told by these broken relics. You're now standing at the edge of this profound enigma, the scent of ancient bronze and millennium-old ivory metaphorically filling the air, the real work of understanding just beginning. So, you're peering into these pits, these incredible, jumbled treasure troves of a lost world, where artifacts were not just discarded but seemingly ritually slain before their burial. The sheer variety is enough to make your head spin. All those jades you remember from Farmer Yan's initial find, now multiplied 1,000-fold, alongside gold, ivory, and heaps of bronze. But amidst this captivating chaos, certain forms begin to command your attention. Objects so striking, so utterly alien to what you might expect from ancient China, that they almost hum with a silent power. Let's gently nudge aside some of those magnificent, yet sadly broken, elephant tusks for a moment, and focus our gaze on the faces staring back at us from the earth, the enormous bronze visages of Sanxingdui. Imagine, if you will, reaching down and carefully brushing away the compacted soil from one of these metallic faces. The bronze is cool beneath your fingertips, its surface patinated with the greens and blues of centuries spent underground. These aren't small, delicate trinkets. We're talking about masks of considerable size and presence. This is a mainstream historical fact. Among the most striking Sanxingdui finds are dozens of bronze masks of various sizes. Some are roughly human life size, allowing you to perhaps imagine a person once wearing them, or at least holding them aloft. But others are considerably larger. One, for instance, is a true giant, measuring over 4 feet wide, around 1.38 meters, and more than 2.5 feet tall, roughly 0.72 meters. That's not a mask, that's practically a small billboard for a very serious, very metallic deity. As you clean more of them, you notice their distinct characteristics. They possess a unique artistic style, a kind of sharp, geometric elegance. The faces are often broad and somewhat flat, with high arching eyebrows. Their noses are remarkably prominent, almost blade-like, casting sharp shadows. The mouths are wide, typically unsmiling, often just a straight, incised line, giving them an air of impassive serenity, or perhaps a secret they're not quite willing to share, the ultimate ancient poker face, if you will. Their ears are almost always exaggeratedly large, often stylized into cloud-like or wing-like shapes, sometimes pierced with holes, as if they once held ornaments of their own. You can almost picture giant, clunky bronze earrings, which would have been quite the statement piece. Many of these masks, like so much else in the pits, bear the scars of their final moments above ground. Some are cracked, others bent or distorted from the force of whatever broke them. Some are missing pieces, their silent stories interrupted. Yet, even in their fragmented state, they retain an undeniable majesty. The craftsmanship is astounding. These aren't crude representations, they are sophisticated examples of bronze casting, often remarkably thin-walled for their size, a testament to the skill of Sanxingdui's ancient metallurgists. They knew their craft, these mysterious people. They weren't just making tools, they were casting souls, or at least the faces of something powerful. What immediately strikes you, especially if you have even a passing familiarity with other ancient Chinese art, like the intricate bronze vessels of the contemporary Shang dynasty from the Central Plains, is how utterly different these Sanxingdui masks are. Shang bronzes are famous for their elaborate Taoti motifs, those stylized animal-like masks with intricate scrollwork. But these Sanxingdui faces, they are far more anthropomorphic, more directly human-like in their basic structure, yet simultaneously alien in their stylization and scale. It's like comparing a complex abstract painting to a stark, monumental sculpture. Both are art, but they speak entirely different visual languages. Now, the million-dollar question, or perhaps the million bronze coin question: what were they for? Who, or what, do these enigmatic faces represent? Were they portraits of revered ancestors, their features idealized and magnified to inspire awe? Perhaps they depicted gods or spirits, their oversized forms meant to convey their supernatural power. You can imagine them mounted on poles, carried in processions, or perhaps affixed to larger, perishable effigies made of wood or cloth. Their bronze faces the only parts to survive the ravages of time. The sheer size of some of them suggests they weren't meant to be worn by ordinary humans. At least not for long. Can you imagine trying to dance in a 4-foot-wide metal mask? You'd need a chiropractor on retainer, ancient or otherwise. Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit for you. Many of these masks feature small, carefully drilled holes at the temples, along the jawline, or on those oversized ears. Archaeologists speculate these holes might have been used to attach the masks to something else, or perhaps, more tantalizingly, to affix decorative elements made of organic materials that have long since vanished. Imagine them with flowing horsehair mustaches, feather headdresses, or perhaps even inlaid eyes made of precious stones that were later plucked out. Suddenly, these serene bronze faces become even more theatrical, more alive, perhaps even a little flamboyant for their Bronze Age debut. Whether these imposing bronze visages were meant to be realistic portraits of specific individuals, idealized representations of a ruling class or a priestly elite, or depictions of supernatural beings from a complex Sanxingdui cosmology, is a question that continues to fuel scholarly debate and public fascination. There are no inscriptions on them, no helpful user manuals left behind by their creators. Each mask is a silent enigma, its slightly parted lips offering no clues, its wide eyes staring out from a past so distant it almost feels like another dimension. They are beautiful, they are haunting, and they are, above all, profoundly strange. And as you'll soon discover, these relatively normal-looking, if you can call a giant bronze face normal masks, are just the opening act for some even more outlandish characters in the Sanxingdui Bronze Ensemble. For now, you're left to ponder these serene, powerful faces, wondering about the rituals they witnessed and the beliefs they embodied, feeling the cool weight of their ancient mystery. You're still surrounded by those magnificent, oversized bronze faces we talked about, their serene, enigmatic expressions almost lulling you into a sense of calm. albeit a slightly mysterious one. You're starting to get a feel for the Sanxingdui aesthetic: big ears, prominent noses, a general air of knowing something you don't. But just when you think you've seen the peak of their artistic peculiarity, your gaze falls upon another set of bronzes, and suddenly, those previous masks look like the height of conventional portraiture. Prepare yourself, because we're about to focus on a feature that truly makes Sanxingdui stand out. A feature that has launched 1,000 theories, some more grounded than others, the eyes that stare beyond. Imagine one of these bronze heads or masks now, perhaps similar in its general facial structure to the ones we've already encountered. The same angular planes, the same broad mouth, but the eyes are like nothing you've ever seen. Instead of being simple almond shapes or recessed sockets, they project outwards, sometimes dramatically so. We're talking about cylindrical, almost telescopic, or sometimes slightly flared, trumpet-like protrusions where the eyeballs should be. This isn't just a depiction of wide-eyed wonder. This is ocular exaggeration taken to an almost surreal extreme. It's as if the ancient Sanxingdui artisans decided that merely looking wasn't enough. Their figures needed to project their gaze, to physically extend their vision into the world, or perhaps into another world entirely. You'd definitely win any staring contest with one of these fellows, though you might feel a bit self-conscious about your own comparatively puny peepers. This is a significant mainstream historical fact. A number of distinct Sanxingdui bronze masks and heads are characterized by these dramatically protruding, columnar, or stalk-like eyes, sometimes extending several inches, or up to 16 centimeters, that's over 6 inches, forward from the face. Some of these remarkable eyes even show traces of having once been painted, perhaps with black pupils on the flared ends to give them a more direct, focused gaze, or inlaid with other materials to make them even more striking. Picture that, not just bronze tubes, but painted, perhaps even shining, extensions that would have made these figures seem incredibly alive and intensely focused. You'd never complain about needing glasses again if you saw what these guys were working with. The visual impact is undeniably powerful, and frankly, a little unsettling. These aren't just passive observers, they are active seers. Their gaze is inescapable, penetrating. What did this signify to the people who created and worshipped them? One prominent theory connects these protruding eyes to later historical accounts of the Shu kingdom, the realm to which Sanxingdui is believed to have belonged. The legendary first king of Shu, named Cancong, is often described in ancient texts, though these texts were written many centuries after Sanxingdui's decline, as having protruding eyes. So, are these masks and heads representations of Cancong, the revered founder of their state, his peculiar ophthalmological feature a mark of his divine ancestry or special powers? It's a compelling idea, linking these strange artifacts directly to a quasi-mythical figure. Another interpretation suggests these eyes represent a shamanistic ability, the power to see into the spirit world, to perceive things hidden from ordinary mortals. Imagine a shaman in a deep trance, their consciousness journeying to other realms. Perhaps these protruding eyes are a symbolic depiction of that ecstatic, far-seeing state. They could also be an emblem of a deity known for its all-seeing vigilance, a divine guardian whose gaze missed nothing. You certainly wouldn't try to sneak a cookie past a god with eyes like that. They'd see you from the next dimension over. And, of course, it's features like these almost unnervingly extended eyes, that have led some to whisper, and others to shout from the internet rooftops, about otherworldly visitors. When you're confronted with something so far outside the typical range of human representation, it's perhaps natural for the imagination to leap towards explanations beyond the terrestrial. Could these be depictions of alien beings? as some enthusiasts propose, or perhaps beings in strange ocular gear. While it's an idea that captures the popular imagination, and let's be fair, these figures do look like they could be extras in a sci-fi epic. Most archaeologists tend to look for explanations rooted in earthly cultures, mythologies, and ritual practices. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some scholars have noted that in certain lighting conditions, especially if these masks were part of a larger, perhaps moving, ritual display, these protruding eyes could have created very dramatic and dynamic visual effects. Imagine firelight flickering off those polished bronze extensions, making the gaze seem to shift and follow you. Or, perhaps more practically, if a bit less romantically, some have suggested they might represent individuals wearing some form of ritual goggles or vision-enhancing devices, though what those might have been made of, or for, is pure speculation. It's the kind of feature that makes you wish you could just ask the artist. So, what were you really going for with the eye stalks? Mate, whether these extraordinary eyes symbolize a specific mythological being like Kong, a shamanistic state of heightened perception, an artistic convention whose original meaning is now entirely lost to us, or simply a very, very enthusiastic depiction of someone who really needed to find their misplaced chariot keys, remains one of Sanxingdui's most tantalizing puzzles. They challenge our understanding of ancient art and force us to confront the sheer diversity of human belief and representation. These staring, protruding, almost demanding eyes are a hallmark of Sanxingdui's unique artistic vision. A bold statement from a civilization that clearly saw the world, and perhaps other worlds, very differently. You're left gazing back at them, these silent bronze seers, wondering just what secrets they witnessed, and what truths lay behind their unwavering, far-reaching stare, now that those telescopic, almost unnervingly perceptive eyes are permanently etched into your mind's eye. Let's broaden our gaze a little. The Sanxingdui artisans, it turns out, weren't just specialists in crafting faces that could outstare a basilisk. They also applied their unique vision to sculpting more complete humanoid forms, as well as a variety of other bronze heads that, while perhaps lacking the extreme ocular protrusions, are no less captivating in their stylized strangeness. You're still with me, sifting through the wonders of those sacrificial pits, and the next figures to emerge demand your attention with their sheer presence and, frankly, their rather unconventional anatomy. Imagine, rising from the earth, a tall, slender, and incredibly imposing bronze figure. This isn't just a head or a mask, it's a nearly complete statue, standing at an impressive height. This is one of the most iconic discoveries from Pit Number 2, a magnificent standing figure that, including its plinth or base, reaches about 2.62 meters, or roughly 8 feet 6 inches tall. That's taller than any basketball player you're likely to meet. This is a key mainstream historical fact. Sanxingdui yielded this remarkable, almost life-size standing bronze figure, alongside numerous other bronze heads, all characterized by highly stylized, often elongated proportions and enigmatic expressions, setting them apart from the artistic conventions of other Chinese Bronze Age cultures. As you take in this standing figure, you're struck by its incredibly slender, almost attenuated build. It's as if the artist stretched the human form vertically, giving it an ethereal, otherworldly grace. The figure stands rigidly upright, conveying a sense of solemn dignity and immense authority. It's dressed in what appears to be an elaborate, long robe with intricate patterns, perhaps chevrons or cloud-like swirls, suggesting a high status, maybe a priest, a king, or even a deity. It's quite the power outfit for 1200 BCE. You certainly wouldn't mistake this individual for a humble rice farmer. The face is similar in style to some of the masks we've discussed, angular, with a prominent nose, large ears, and that characteristically impassive, serious mouth. No smiles here, just profound composure. But what truly captures your attention, apart from its height and attire, are its hands. They are enormous, comically oversized compared to the rest of its slender body, and they are held out in front, curled into a circular or rectangular grip, as if they once held something very important. What that object was is a mystery, as it was likely made of a perishable material like wood or ivory that has long since decayed. Perhaps it was a ceremonial staff, a scepter of power, a symbolic weapon, or even one of those massive elephant tusks that were found in such abundance in the pits. It's a classic archaeological guessing game. What was in the giant invisible fist? Some people have even joked, looking at modern photos, that it appears to be holding an invisible microphone, ready to deliver a very important, very ancient sermon. Beyond this magnificent, full-standing figure, there are numerous other bronze heads, distinct from the masks we looked at earlier because they are fully three-dimensional, clearly intended to represent a complete head rather than just a facial covering. These heads vary in size, from relatively small to quite substantial. Many share the same stylistic hallmarks, the elongated skulls, sometimes tapering upwards almost like a cone or a mitre, the large, simply rendered ears, often with those peculiar decorative perforations, and the same impassive, watchful expressions. Some have traces of black pigment in their incised eyes and eyebrows, which would have made their features stand out even more starkly against the gleam of the bronze. It's like an entire gallery of ancient, metallic personages, each one silent, each one profoundly alien to our modern sensibilities. You notice that while these figures are detailed in their regalia and general form, they often lack strong individualizing features. It's as if they represent types or roles, the priest, the ruler, the ancestor, the spirit, rather than specific, named individuals. This abstraction lends them a timeless quality, making them seem less like portraits and more like archetypes from a forgotten mythology. Their proportions, too, are consistently non-naturalistic. The slender bodies, the elongated necks and heads, the oversized hands. These are not attempts at realistic human anatomy. This was a deliberate artistic choice, perhaps meant to convey divinity, spiritual power, or a lineage distinct from ordinary mortals. They've definitely seen things, these figures, but their bronze lips are sealed. Trying to get a straight answer out of them about what they represent would be like trying to get a cat to explain quantum physics. Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit to ponder: the very top of some of these bronze heads, and indeed the head of the large standing figure, is sometimes shaped or finished in a way that suggests something else might have been attached there. Perhaps elaborate headdresses made of feathers or other organic materials, or even additional metallic components that are now missing. This adds another layer to their potential original appearance, making them even more complex and possibly even more startling than they appear to us today in their bare bronze state. The precise identity and function of these slender, stylized humanoid figures, whether they represent divine beings to be worshipped, powerful priestly intermediaries who communicated with those gods, or revered ancestors whose spirits watched over the living, are still actively debated by researchers, with each interpretation offering different insights into the complex belief systems and social structure of Sanxingdui society. They don't fit neatly into our preconceived notions of what ancient art, particularly ancient Chinese art, should look like. They are a bold, bronze exclamation mark in the story of human creativity, challenging us to expand our definitions and open our minds to entirely different ways of seeing and representing the world, and perhaps the worlds beyond. You are left to marvel at their strange elegance, their silent testimony to a people who clearly had a very distinct vision of power, divinity, and the human or perhaps not-so-human form. After encountering those silent, elongated figures who seemed to stand as sentinels from another age, their oversized hands perhaps once gripping symbols of power or knowledge, you might think the capacity for surprise from these sacrificial pits is dwindling. You'd be wrong, so very wrong. The Sanxingdui culture, it seems, had an entire orchestra of strangeness, and we've only just begun to appreciate its full symphony. Shift your gaze now from the humanoid to the botanical, or at least a metallic interpretation of it, because what you're about to witness are some of the most breathtaking and symbolically rich artifacts ever to emerge from the Bronze Age, the towering spirit trees. Imagine, as archaeologists piece together countless fragments, a task that must have felt like the world's most complicated IKEA project, but with far more spiritual significance and definitely fewer Allen wrenches, these incredible structures begin to take shape. We're not talking about little bonsai-sized trinkets. This is a mainstream historical fact. Several bronze trees, or significant fragments thereof, were discovered in the Sanxingdui pits, with the largest and most complete, known as Tree Number 1 from Pit Number 2, standing approximately 3.96 meters tall, that's nearly 13 feet, when painstakingly reassembled. 13 feet of intricately cast bronze, reaching upwards as if trying to brush the heavens. Even in its reconstructed state, it's an object of awe-inspiring scale and complexity. Picture this magnificent creation. It rises from a circular, almost wheel-like base, a sturdy central trunk forming its spine. From this trunk, multiple sections of branches extend outwards and upwards, typically in 3 tiers. These aren't bare, lifeless limbs. Oh no. Each branch is a miniature world of its own, adorned with delicately cast leaves, stylized flame-like ornaments, open-mouthed flowers, and even ripening fruits. And perched upon these branches, or fluttering amongst them, are exquisitely detailed birds, their long tails gracefully trailing. Some theories suggest these birds might represent suns, as ancient Chinese myths, like that of the Fusang tree, tell of 10 sunbirds roosting in a mulberry tree in the eastern sea, taking turns to illuminate the world. You can almost hear the ancient Twitter feed, though these birds were probably relaying messages far more profound than what you had for breakfast. The level of detail is astounding. The craftsmanship required to cast such a large, multi-part, and yet incredibly delicate structure in bronze is simply mind-boggling for that era. Each element, every leaf, every bird, every flower, would have been individually cast and then ingeniously assembled into the larger whole. This wasn't just art, it was an engineering marvel, a testament to the advanced metallurgical skills of the Sanxingdui people. You'd think watering a 13-foot bronze tree would be a nightmare, but at least you'd never have to worry about overwatering or it shedding leaves on your ancient carpet. But what did these bronze trees mean to their creators? Their very form, reaching from a base on the ground towards the sky, strongly suggests the concept of an axis mundi, or world tree, a common mythological motif in many ancient cultures, symbolizing the connection between the earthly realm, the heavens above, and often an underworld below. These trees could have been seen as literal conduits, pathways for spirits, ancestors, or shamans to travel between these different cosmological layers. Imagine a ritual taking place before one of these towering structures, the flickering firelight making the bronze birds and leaves seem to dance, the air thick with incense and chanting. It would have been a powerful, immersive experience, designed to transport the participants, and perhaps the shaman, to another plane of existence. Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit for you on the trunk of one of the most famous bronze trees. Tree Number 1, there is what appears to be a sinuous, dragon-like creature with sharp claws coiling its way downwards. This adds another layer of symbolism. Was this dragon a guardian of the tree, a messenger from the spirit world, or perhaps a representation of the flow of energy between heaven and earth? The imagery is potent, a sacred tree, teeming with life and celestial birds, with a powerful mythical beast descending its trunk. It's the stuff of epic myths, a scene you might expect to find in a fantasy novel. Yet, here it is, rendered in solid bronze by people who lived over 3,000 years ago. The trees were also, like everything else in those pits, found deliberately broken and bent. The effort it must have taken to dismantle these monumental structures before their ritual burial speaks volumes about the importance and solemnity of the act. It wasn't a casual discarding. It was a profound, symbolic decommissioning. Perhaps the spirits that inhabited them were being sent off, or the connection they provided was being intentionally severed. Whether these magnificent bronze trees were primarily symbols of cosmic order, physical representations of specific myths like the Fusang tree and its sunbirds, tangible props for shamanistic journeys to other realms, or a complex combination of these functions, remains a subject of rich scholarly interpretation and ongoing research. Each delicate bird, each stylized fruit, each coiling dragon seems to whisper a fragment of a lost belief system. They stand as silent, metallic testaments to a people who clearly possessed a deep and intricate understanding of their place in the universe, and who went to extraordinary lengths to give that understanding tangible, breathtaking form. You can almost feel the ancient energy still clinging to their branches, a connection to a world where trees of bronze touched the sky and birds of metal carried the sun. Those magnificent bronze trees, with their delicate birds seeming to chirp silent, metallic songs and that impressive dragon coiling its way down the trunk, were really just a tantalizing glimpse into the Sanxingdui people's rich and complex relationship with the animal kingdom. It seems their world was absolutely teeming with creatures, both those you might recognize from a stroll through the Sichuan countryside, and others that seem to have slithered, flown, or stalked their way out of a vivid dream or a half-forgotten myth. As you continue to explore the contents of these sacrificial pits, you find yourself surrounded by a veritable menagerie cast in enduring bronze, a mythical bestiary waiting to be catalogued. Let's start with the more familiar, shall we? You might unearth a bronze rooster, its chest puffed out with metallic pride, its comb sharp and defined. It's so well observed, you can almost hear its crow echoing across 3 millennia. Perhaps it wouldn't wake you up at 4 a.m. like its flesh-and-blood counterparts, which, let's be honest, is a definite advantage for any artifact. Then there are snakes, their sinuous bodies sometimes coiled, sometimes extended as if in mid-slither, their scales perhaps hinted at by incised patterns. These aren't just crude representations. The Sanxingdui artists clearly had a keen eye for the natural world, capturing the essence of these creatures even as they imbued them with their unique stylistic flair. This is a key mainstream historical fact beyond the human-like figures and trees. The Sanxingdui pits yielded numerous bronze sculptures of animals, including some surprisingly realistic though still stylized depictions of creatures like roosters, snakes, and various birds, alongside more overtly mythical or hybrid forms, showcasing a diverse faunal iconography. But then, things start to get a little weirder. And by weirder, I mean wonderfully imaginative. You'll encounter birds, for instance, that aren't just ordinary sparrows or pigeons. These are birds with exaggerated, ornate crests that look like elaborate crowns, or with impossibly long tail feathers that trail like bronze ribbons. Some have sharp, predatory beaks and wide, staring eyes, suggesting they were birds of power, perhaps eagles or falcons, but rendered in a way that elevates them beyond mere nature studies. They seem to be part bird, part symbol. And then there are the creatures that truly make you scratch your head and consult your imaginary Sanxingdui fantastic beasts and where to find them guide. You might find a bronze head that looks vaguely feline, but with horns, or a creature with the body of a quadruped but the face of something almost human, or perhaps one of those enigmatic Sanxingdui masks. There are dragon-like figures, distinct from the one on the spirit tree, some with gaping jaws and serpentine bodies, their forms a blend of reptilian power and pure fantasy. Is that a dragon-turtle hybrid, a phoenix with extra bits? The Sanxingdui artists weren't afraid to mix and match, creating chimerical beings that defy easy classification. Their Dungeons & Dragons monster manual must have been an absolutely wild read. What did all these creatures signify were the more realistic animals, like the roosters and snakes, simply representations of the local fauna, perhaps offered as sacrifices or included for their symbolic values. The rooster for vigilance or connection to the sun, the snake for rebirth or chthonic power, or were they clan totems, the spiritual emblems of different family groups within Sanxingdui society? It's possible. Many ancient cultures had deep spiritual connections with specific animals, seeing them as ancestors, protectors, or intermediaries with the spirit world. The more mythical or hybrid beasts are even more open to interpretation. They could be denizens of the spirit world, powerful entities that needed to be appeased or invoked through rituals. Perhaps they were guardians, meant to ward off evil spirits or protect sacred spaces. Or they could be characters from epic Sanxingdui myths, tales of gods, heroes, and monsters that were told around flickering fires. Stories whose narratives are now as lost to us as the breath of the people who told them. You can almost imagine a Sanxingdui elder pointing to one of these bronze beasts and recounting its legendary deeds, its voice hushed with reverence or excitement. Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit for your consideration. Some of these bronze animal heads or figures have a very peculiar, almost comical or grotesque expression. There's one particular bird-like head with a wide, hooked beak and round, surprised-looking eyes that almost seems like a caricature. It makes you wonder about the range of expression the Sanxingdui artists were capable of, and whether everything was meant to be deadly serious and spiritually profound. Could there have been a place for humor, or even for depicting mischievous or less benevolent spirits within their cosmology? Or perhaps these expressions had meanings that are simply opaque to our modern eyes, signifiers of qualities we no longer recognize. The extent to which these animal figures represent literal fauna from the ancient Sichuan environment, symbolic representations of clan totems or nature spirits, or characters from a now-lost corpus of Sanxingdui mythology is still a fascinating area of scholarly inquiry. Each new interpretation adds another layer to our understanding. Yet the core mystery often remains. These bronze creatures, from the most realistic to the most fantastical, were clearly important. They were crafted with immense skill, imbued with symbolic power, and ultimately consigned to the earth in those dramatic sacrificial acts, alongside the masks, the human figures, and the spirit trees. They are another vital piece of the Sanxingdui puzzle, a testament to a worldview where the lines between human, animal, and spirit were wonderfully, and sometimes bizarrely, blurred. You're surrounded by this silent, watchful menagerie, each creature a frozen echo from a world governed by very different rules and populated by very different beings, while those bronze creatures, from the strikingly realistic to the wildly fantastical, offer a profound glimpse into the Sanxingdui worldview and its teeming spiritual ecosystem. You must remember that the pits held treasures wrought from materials often considered even more precious, more potent than bronze. As you continue to virtually sift through the contents of these sacred repositories, your eyes adjust to new sheens, different textures, the cool gleam of gold, the milky luster of jade, and the surprising abundance of ivory. It's clear the Sanxingdui people weren't just masters of bronze. They had a sophisticated appreciation for a whole range of valuable materials, each perhaps holding a different kind of spiritual currency. Let's start with the most universally dazzling of materials, gold. Now, Sanxingdui isn't characterized by the massive gold hoards you might associate with, say, ancient Egypt or the Incas, but what gold they did use, they used with striking effect. The star of the show, without a doubt, is the famous golden staff, or more accurately, a gold sheath that once encased a wooden staff, the organic core having long since turned to dust. This is a key mainstream historical fact. Among the most significant gold artifacts from Sanxingdui is this golden sheath, approximately 1.42 meters, nearly 5 feet long, made from a thin sheet of gold wrapped around a core. It's not solid gold, that would be impractically heavy, but the effect would have been one of pure, radiant authority. Imagine this staff, gleaming in the Sichuan sun or by the flickering light of ritual fires. It's the original bling stick of power, if you will. But it's not just a plain gold tube. Oh no. Its surface is meticulously decorated with incised designs that are incredibly revealing. There are stylized human heads, their hair depicted in a particular fashion, wearing what appear to be triangular crowns or headbands. There are also fish, their scales carefully rendered, and long-legged birds, perhaps cranes or herons, their necks elegantly curved. And then, most intriguingly, there are arrows or darts piercing the fish and sometimes the birds. The imagery is complex and clearly symbolic, perhaps depicting a ritual, a myth, or an emblem of the ruler's power over the natural and human worlds. Was it a scepter of kingship, a ritual implement for a high priest, or something else entirely? Its exact function remains elusive, but its importance is undeniable. Beyond this magnificent staff, other gold items were found, primarily in the form of thin gold foils. Some of these are shaped like masks, delicate and almost ethereal. These weren't sturdy enough to be worn on their own. Instead, they were likely applied to the surface of other objects, perhaps covering parts of the bronze heads to give them golden complexions, or adorning perishable figures made of wood or other organic materials. Imagine those already imposing bronze faces with shimmering gold accents. The effect would have been stunning, transforming them into truly radiant beings. You'd need steadier hands than a brain surgeon performing on a hummingbird to work with such delicate gold leaf. Then, of course, there's jade, the material that first announced Sanxingdui's existence back in 1929. The sacrificial pits yielded a treasure trove of jade artifacts, far exceeding Farmer Yan's initial find. You'll see familiar forms if you know a bit about ancient Chinese jade traditions, bai discs, those flat, circular pieces of jade with a hole in the center, often associated with heaven, and Kong tubes, square on the outside and round on the inside, perhaps symbolizing the earth. But at Sanxingdui, these forms sometimes have their own local twist in terms of style or accompanying carvings. Most striking, perhaps, are the ceremonial jade blades. These are not functional weapons, but exaggerated, beautifully polished symbols of power and status. There are long, slender zhang blades, some with intricate carvings near the hilt, and dagger axes, or ji, also rendered in precious jade. The skill required to work jade, a notoriously hard and unforgiving stone, into these elegant and precise forms is a testament to the patience and artistry of Sanxingdui craftsmen. Each piece feels cool and weighty in your imagined hand, a sliver of eternity. And finally, there's the astonishing quantity of elephant ivory. We're talking about hundreds of complete elephant tusks, some of them enormous, carefully laid in the pits amongst the bronzes and jades. The sheer volume is staggering. They weren't just whistling Dixie, they clearly had the elephants to prove their importance, or at least access to a lot of their tusks. What were they for? Unlike in some other cultures, very few of these tusks show signs of extensive carving or decoration. It seems the raw material itself, the tusk in its natural form, was considered immensely valuable. Perhaps they were symbols of wealth and power, tributes from distant lands, or offerings particularly pleasing to certain deities. The presence of so much ivory also raises questions about the ancient environment of Sichuan. Were elephants roaming the region in large numbers? Or was this the result of long-distance trade networks? Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit regarding the gold foils. Some are so thin and feature such specific facial features that it's tempting to imagine them being pressed directly onto human faces, perhaps as part of a funerary ritual for elites whose bodies were not interred in these pits, or used to adorn sculptures made of less permanent materials. This idea of gilding faces, whether of the living in ceremony or the deceased in effigy, adds a layer of ritual performance and transformation that is quite captivating. Talk about a killer ancient skincare routine. 24-karat ritual masks. The precise symbolic meaning and hierarchical value of gold versus jade versus bronze, or even ivory, within Sanxingdui society, and how these materials related to specific deities, cosmic concepts, or ritual functions are complex questions that scholars continue to investigate through comparative studies and meticulous material analysis. Each material likely held its own unique set of connotations. Gold, with its solar brilliance and incorruptibility; jade, with its connection to purity, eternity, and spiritual power; ivory, with its exotic origins and imposing natural beauty. Together, they paint a picture of a civilization that was not only artistically innovative, but also deeply invested in harnessing the power and symbolism of the Earth's most precious resources for their spiritual and political life. These aren't just pretty objects. They are fragments of a forgotten language of power, belief, and beauty. All this incredible wealth you've been witnessing. The mastery of bronze evident in those haunting masks and towering trees, the gleam of that golden staff, the cool allure of countless jade blades, the sheer astonishing volume of ivory tusks. It all paints a picture of a highly developed, organized, and undeniably powerful civilization. These weren't the works of a scattered group of part-time artisans. This was a society with resources, with specialized skills, and with a clear sense of purpose, however enigmatic that purpose might seem to us now. But the big question hangs in the air, doesn't it? Who were these people? What did they call themselves? Can we put a name to this ghost culture that left behind such an extraordinary material legacy? Well, for a long time, the Sichuan Basin, where Sanxingdui lies nestled, was considered something of a cultural backwater in terms of ancient Chinese history, at least compared to the well-documented Shang and Zhou dynasties flourishing in the Central Plains along the Yellow River. But ancient Chinese historical texts, though often written centuries after the events they describe and sometimes prone to a bit of, let's say, literary embellishment, do speak of a kingdom in this region, a kingdom known as Shu. This is the crucial mainstream historical fact, archaeological evidence from Sanxingdui, with its unique style and advanced bronze casting technology, now strongly suggests that this site was a major capital, or at least a profoundly important religious and cultural center of this ancient Shu kingdom. This Shu state is understood to have existed in the Sichuan Basin concurrently with the famous Shang dynasty, roughly from the 17th or 16th century BCE down to its conquest by the Qin state in 316 BCE, though Sanxingdui itself seems to have declined much earlier, around the 12th or 11th century BCE. For historians, the discovery of Sanxingdui was like finding a stunningly illustrated chapter in a book they only previously knew from a few cryptic footnotes. The Shu kingdom, before these archaeological revelations, was a shadowy entity, its kings and history shrouded in legend. Texts like the Shu Wang Benji Annals of the Shu Kings or the Huayang Guoji Chronicles of Huayang recount tales of early Shu rulers. Remember Kangkong, the first semi-legendary king we mentioned earlier, the one described as having protruding eyes. The Sanxingdui masks with their extraordinary ocular projections suddenly provide a startling, tangible echo to these old stories. It's a rare and thrilling moment when archaeology seems to reach out and shake hands with mythology, even if it's a very cautious, "Nice to meet you, let's not jump to conclusions" kind of handshake. The Sichuan Basin is a geographically distinct region, ringed by mountains. This relative isolation likely played a significant role in the Shu kingdom's unique cultural trajectory. You can see it in their art. It's so different, so Sanxingdui, compared to the bronze work of the Shang. It's like they were throwing their own very exclusive, very avant-garde cultural party in their mountain-ringed VIP lounge. You probably needed a special password and a bronze bird feather to even get an invitation. Yet, they weren't entirely cut off. The very knowledge of bronze metallurgy, for example, suggests some level of contact or technological transmission, even if they then took that technology and ran with it in a completely different artistic direction. There's also evidence of some trade, like cowrie shells found at Sanxingdui, which likely came from distant coastal regions. However, despite these connections, Shu developed on its own terms, creating a powerful state with a complex social structure, a sophisticated artistic tradition, and, as those sacrificial pits testify, a profound and dramatic religious life. The Sanxingdui finds provide the hard evidence for this, demonstrating that the Shu kingdom was far from a primitive backwater. It was a civilization capable of mobilizing vast resources, commanding incredible artistic and technical skill, and sustaining itself for centuries. It's a bit like trying to assemble a piece of incredibly complex IKEA furniture, but your only instructions are a few lines from a cryptic poem and a dream your eccentric great-aunt once had. The ancient texts give us glimpses, names, and narratives, but they are often filtered, fragmented, and written long after the fact. Sanxingdui provides the physical pieces, the stunning, bewildering, tangible reality. The challenge for archaeologists and historians is to try and see how, or if, these two sets of evidence fit together. Here's a quirky or fringe tidbit for you. Some of those later legends about the Shu people don't just stop at Kangkong's crab-like eyes. They describe subsequent Shu kings with equally unusual attributes or legendary deeds, like Duyu, who is said to have taught the people agriculture and later transformed into a cuckoo. While it's easy to dismiss these as pure fancy, the sheer peculiarity of the Sanxingdui artifacts makes you wonder if these tales, however mythologized, might preserve some distant folk memory of a kingdom that was genuinely perceived as different by its neighbors or by later chroniclers. It's like finding out your granddad's wildest fishing stories. The ones with the fish that could fly and sing opera actually had a grain of truth, even if the fish didn't hit a high sea. But even as Sanxingdui gives a powerful voice and a stunning face to the Shu kingdom, it also deepens its mystery in one crucial aspect. For all this artistry, for all this evident societal organization, one thing is conspicuously missing from Sanxingdui itself, a system of writing contemporary with the main period of the site, the Shang dynasty. Its supposed contemporary had a well-developed script found on oracle bones and bronzes, but at Sanxingdui so far, silence. No extensive inscriptions, no archives, no lengthy dedications on their magnificent bronzes telling us who they were, who they worshipped, or why they buried their treasures. They were clearly too busy making mind-blowing art and complex religious statements to bother with. You know, writing it all down for posterity. Priorities. People. Priorities. The exact political relationship between the Shu kingdom, as represented by Sanxingdui, and the contemporaneous Shang dynasty, whether they were formidable rivals, occasional allies who traded and exchanged technologies, wary trading partners keeping each other at arm's length, or largely independent entities with only sporadic contact due to geographical barriers, is still a subject of considerable academic discussion and ongoing research. Each new find, each new analysis adds a piece to this vast ancient geopolitical puzzle. You're standing in the heart of this rediscovered kingdom, a place that for centuries was more legend than reality, now trying to piece together its story from silent, stunning clues. So, we have this magnificent, enigmatic civilization, likely the heart of the ancient Shu kingdom, a culture that could create art that still boggles our minds, mobilize resources on a grand scale, and perform rituals of breathtaking drama. You've walked with me through their treasure-filled pits, gazed upon their serene and startling bronze faces, marveled at their spirit trees, and puzzled over their menagerie of metallic creatures. We've even given them a name, Shu, borrowed from the whispers of later historians. But there's a profound silence at the heart of Sanxingdui, a vast echoing quiet that makes understanding them both incredibly challenging and irresistibly alluring. They left us no instruction manual, no diary entries from a Sanxingdui teenager complaining about chores, no epic poems inscribed on their treasures. As far as we currently know, they left us no words of their own. Think about what that means. For many other great Bronze Age civilizations, writing is a key that unlocks so much. The Shang dynasty, flourishing in the Central Plains around the same time as Sanxingdui, left behind thousands of oracle bones, inscribed with questions to the gods about warfare, harvests, and royal toothaches. These inscriptions give us names of kings, details of rituals, glimpses into their cosmology. The Mycenaeans in ancient Greece had their linear B-tablets, meticulously recording inventories and administrative details. These written records, even when fragmentary or difficult to decipher, provide a direct line, however faint, to the thoughts, concerns, and language of the people themselves, but from Sanxingdui's golden age, an almost complete blank. This is a critical mainstream historical fact, unlike the contemporary Shang dynasty, which possessed a well-developed writing system, the oracle bone script, a direct ancestor of modern Chinese writing. No comparable extensive textual records from the Sanxingdui culture's main period of flourishing, roughly from the 17th down to the 12th or 11th centuries BCE, have been discovered. This forces all our interpretations of their incredible artifacts, their complex society, and their unique beliefs to rely almost entirely on the archaeological context, the iconography of the objects themselves, and comparisons with other cultures, which can be a very tricky business. It's the ultimate ancient read between the lines, except, in this case, there are frustratingly few lines to read. Why this silence? Did they truly not have a writing system? It's hard to imagine such a sophisticated society, capable of the complex organization required for their monumental bronze production and large-scale rituals, functioning without some form of record-keeping or symbolic communication. One very plausible explanation is that they did write, but on perishable materials. Imagine them using bamboo slips, wooden tablets, or perhaps even silk scrolls, materials that would have long since decayed in the humid environment of the Sichuan basin, leaving no trace behind. It's a tantalizing thought. Entire libraries of Sanxingdui knowledge, their myths, their histories, their philosophies, all turned to dust. Archaeologists would probably trade a lifetime supply of really good Sichuan noodles for just one legible Sanxingdui shopping list, let alone a royal decree. Another possibility is that their society was structured in such a way that widespread literacy wasn't considered essential, or that written records were confined to a very small elite or specific, limited functions that haven't been unearthed. Perhaps their traditions were primarily oral, passed down through generations by storytellers and shamans, their complex belief systems encoded in the rich visual language of their art rather than in written texts. Maybe they communicated telepathically through their giant bronze ears. Okay, probably not that last one, but it does make you wonder if they just thought writing was a bit too mainstream for their decidedly avant-garde tastes. Now, it's not entirely true to say there are no markings whatsoever. Archaeologists have found some pottery sherds and a few bronze items with incised symbols or groups of symbols. These are often geometric, sometimes pictograph-like, but there are very few of them, and they don't appear to form a coherent, systematic script. Are these makers' marks, clan emblems, ritual symbols, or perhaps the very earliest, hesitant steps towards a unique Sanxingdui writing system that never fully developed, or whose later stages are lost to us? This is where you get some quirky or fringe tidbits. As the desire for Sanxingdui to speak is so strong, some researchers have tried to link these isolated symbols to the much later Yi script from southwestern China, or even to more far-flung and speculative connections. It's a bit like finding a few random doodles and trying to prove they're a lost play by Shakespeare. The enthusiasm is understandable, but the evidence is usually thinner than a Sanxingdui gold foil mask. This absence of a clear textual narrative forces us to become detectives of a different sort. We must scrutinize every detail of the artifacts themselves, the way a figure is posed, the animals that accompany it, the scenes depicted on a golden staff. We look for patterns, for recurring motifs, for clues in how objects were placed in the sacrificial pits. We compare Sanxingdui with other ancient cultures, looking for parallels in myth or ritual that might shed a sliver of light. But always, there's that element of inference, of educated guesswork. The artifacts have to speak for themselves, and like any silent witness, their testimony can be interpreted in multiple ways. Whether the Sanxingdui civilization possessed a more extensive writing system that has simply not survived due to the use of perishable materials, or if their societal and ritualistic communication relied more heavily on oral traditions and complex symbolic visual language than on widespread literacy, is a fundamental question that continues to shape our understanding of this unique culture. This very lack of words is, in a way, part of Sanxingdui's profound allure. It creates a space for wonder, for mystery, for our own imaginations to try and fill the void. It forces us to engage with these ancient people on a purely visual, almost intuitive level. Their world speaks to us through the haunting eyes of their bronzes, the silent majesty of their spirit trees, and the enigmatic power of their golden treasures. A language without words, but rich with meaning, if only we can learn to hear its ancient, silent cadence. So, the Sanxingdui people didn't leave us a handy beginner's guide to our religion, complete with an FAQ section and a glossary of deities, which, frankly, was a bit inconsiderate for future sleepy YouTubers trying to unravel their mysteries. It's like trying to understand a complex religious service when all you've been given is the collection plate and a hymn book with half the pages torn out and the rest in a language you don't speak. But their actions, especially the existence and nature of those two dramatic sacrificial pits we've explored. Scream, one thing loud and clear. Ritual was everything to them. And these weren't quiet, contemplative little ceremonies, they were grand, theatrical, and involved the systematic destruction of immense wealth and artistry. You're standing again at the edge of one of those pits, not as it was found, silent and packed with earth, but as it might have been on the day of its creation, its final, fiery consecration. The air is thick with smoke, not just from ordinary wood fires, but from the burning of precious objects. You can almost smell the acrid tang of melting bronze, the strange, unsettling scent of scorching ivory. Perhaps even the sweet perfume of burning silk or other organic offerings that have left little trace. This is a core understanding. A mainstream historical fact, the Sanxingdui pits are widely interpreted by archaeologists as sites of large-scale sacrificial ceremonies, where vast quantities of valuable objects, including those stunning bronzes, intricate jades, gleaming gold, and hundreds of elephant tusks, were ritually broken, burned, and then carefully buried. Why would a civilization go to such extraordinary lengths? Why destroy what was clearly so precious, so painstakingly created? This is where we move into the realm of trying to understand the mindset behind these rituals, and the idea of appeasement often comes to the fore. Imagine a world where life is precarious, where harvests can fail, rivers can flood, earthquakes can strike, and the Sichuan basin is indeed seismically active, and where the favor of unseen powers, gods, spirits, ancestors, is considered essential for survival and prosperity. In such a world, when things go wrong, or to prevent them from going wrong, you might feel compelled to make a significant gesture, a truly monumental offering to soothe, pacify, or appease those powerful and perhaps easily offended entities. These Sanxingdui folks didn't believe in doing things by halves. If a deity or a powerful spirit needed appeasing, they weren't just going to offer a few nice thoughts and a couple of ripe peaches. They were going to offer the entire contents of the divine treasury, it seems. Let's try to picture one of these ceremonies. Perhaps those enormous bronze masks, with their serene or startling expressions, were mounted on poles, or even worn by imposing figures, their metallic faces catching the firelight, seeming to shift and glower in the smoke-filled air. Maybe that giant standing figure, with its oversized hands, presided over the event, a silent, metallic representative of a king, a priest, or a god. Those towering bronze trees, adorned with their sunbirds and coiling dragons, could have been central altars, focal points for the ritual action, the symbolic connection between the earthly realm and the heavens where the gods presumably resided. You have to wonder if the gods were up there thinking, all right, we get it, you're committed. You can stop throwing priceless art into the hole now, chanting, drumming. The clang of bronze on bronze as objects were deliberately shattered before being cast into the flames or the pit. The soundscape must have been intense, almost hypnotic. Were there processions, dances, incantations uttered in a language now utterly lost? The sheer scale of the operation, the immense value of the goods interred, suggests these weren't everyday occurrences. They were likely moments of profound societal importance, perhaps times of crisis, of transition, or of immense communal thanksgiving or fear. The deliberate destruction is key. It wasn't just about burying treasures, it was about transforming them, sending their essence, their spirit, to another realm. Breaking an object can be seen as releasing its spirit, killing it in the earthly realm so it can be reborn or utilized in the spirit world. Burning achieves a similar transformation, sending the object up in smoke and ash, a direct offering to the powers above. This act of surrendering something so valuable, something that embodied so much skill and resource, would have been an incredibly potent statement of devotion, or, perhaps, of desperation. Here's a quirky tidbit to chew on later. More extensive excavations around the Sanxingdui site, particularly with the discovery of new pits in recent years, have revealed not just these spectacular art objects, but also significant quantities of animal bones, including domesticated pigs, cattle, and sheep. This suggests that large-scale feasting or animal sacrifice may have been an integral part of these ceremonies. So, picture the scene again, not just the smoke from burning artifacts, but also the smell of roasting meat, a massive sacred barbecue accompanying the decommissioning of these spiritual tools. That's one way to ensure all the divine senses were catered to, whether the primary driving force behind these grand sacrificial acts was a desire to appease angered or capricious deities after a disaster, to ensure continued prosperity by feeding the spirits with precious offerings, to mark a significant dynastic or societal shift by ritually interring the symbols of a previous era, or a complex combination of these powerful motives, remains a central question in Sanxingdui research. Each theory offers a different window into their possible beliefs. Were they trying to avert a specific threat? Were they paying tribute to cosmic powers? Were they, perhaps, ending one world and beginning another? And these objects had to be left behind, ritually neutralized so they couldn't interfere with the new order. You see the Sanxingdui people, their faces illuminated by fire, their movements dictated by ancient, forgotten rites, as they offer up their most extraordinary creations. The air is charged with an almost electric energy, a mixture of reverence, fear, hope, and an unshakable belief in a world teeming with spirits and forces that demanded respect, and when necessary, spectacular, almost unimaginable appeasement. These weren't just objects being buried, they were part of a profound dialogue with the unknown. Those intense, fiery rituals we imagined, the sheer, almost hallucinatory otherness of the Sanxingdui artifacts you've encountered. It all circles back to a persistent, nagging question: who, or perhaps more provocatively, what, were the Sanxingdui people trying to appease, worship, or represent with these extraordinary creations? Mainstream archaeology, as we've touched upon, offers compelling theories rooted in earthly beliefs, ancestral spirits, nature deities, mythical kings, shamanistic practices. These explanations are built upon careful comparison with other cultures, iconographic analysis, and the archaeological context itself. But the profoundly unique, almost startlingly unfamiliar nature of these Sichuan finds has, perhaps inevitably, uncorked the bottle of more unconventional speculation. And it's here, in this space of deep mystery and visual shock, that some people look at those staring telescopic eyes, those slender elongated figures, those almost mechanically precise bronze forms, and let their imaginations travel far, far beyond the confines of our world. Let's be clear, when you're confronted with a bronze mask that looks like it could have been a prop from a vintage Doctor Who episode, you know, the really spooky ones that haunted your childhood, it's understandable why your mind might start to wander into the realms of science fiction. The Sanxingdui artifacts, for some, don't just whisper of a lost human culture, they seem to hint at contact with something else. This is where the theories about visitors from afar, ancient astronauts, or gods who were actually extraterrestrial beings, begin to surface in popular culture and on the wilder shores of the internet. Lost your car keys? Probably aliens. Find a 3,000-year-old bronze culture with art unlike anything else on Earth? Definitely aliens, according to some. Why do these ideas take root so readily with Sanxingdui? Well, first and foremost, It's that striking visual evidence we've been exploring. Those columnar, protruding eyes on certain masks and heads, they are so unlike anything in the natural animal kingdom or typical human representation that they practically invite analogies to beings in helmets, goggles, or creatures with entirely different sensory organs. The tall, slender figures, with their oversized hands and impassive faces, can seem, to a modern eye conditioned by decades of science fiction imagery, to fit certain archetypes of alien beings. The sheer technological skill in bronze casting, while remarkable for its time, sometimes gets amplified in these theories into evidence of lost advanced technology bestowed by these supposed visitors. Then there's the silence we discussed. The lack of a decipherable written language from Sanxingdui's peak. This void becomes a fertile ground for speculation. If they didn't leave their own explanations, the argument goes, then perhaps the explanations are too fantastic for conventional history to handle. The perceived isolation of the Shu kingdom, tucked away in the Sichuan basin, and the apparent suddenness with which this unique artistic tradition appears in the archaeological record. Though, of course, cultural development is usually more gradual than it first appears, can also feed into narratives of external influence. It's important to approach these ideas gently, as requested. They are part of the Sanxingdui phenomenon, part of its modern reception, and they speak to a deep human fascination with the unknown and the possibility of life beyond Earth. When faced with artifacts that are so radically different, so alien in the sense of being utterly foreign to our expectations, it's a natural human tendency to reach for extraordinary explanations. The figures look strange, therefore they must be non-human. It's a leap of logic, but an understandable one when you're staring into the face of a Sanxingdui bronze. So, were they aliens? Well, they certainly weren't boring, whatever they were. Perhaps their supposed alien advisors just had really specific and rather expensive interior design requests for those sacrificial pits. Now, it's crucial to balance this with the mainstream archaeological perspective. This is a key historical fact. While the unique stylization of Sanxingdui artifacts has indeed fueled a wide range of speculative theories about extraterrestrial influence in popular culture, the overwhelming consensus among mainstream archaeologists and art historians is that these features are symbolic representations deeply rooted in local human beliefs. Complex mythology, such as the aforementioned legends of early Shu kings like Kan Kong with his protruding eyes, and specific ritual practices. For most scholars, the otherness of Sanxingdui art is a testament to the incredible diversity of human imagination and spiritual expression. Not evidence of Eid stopping by for a cosmic cup of tea, the protruding eyes, for example, are more likely to be interpreted as symbols of divine insight, shamanic power, or the all-seeing nature of a deity, rather than a literal depiction of an alien's optical organs. Here's a quirky tidbit that highlights how these ideas permeate popular culture, the sheer volume of Sanxingdui alien fan art. Speculative reconstructions, and elaborate online theories you can find is truly astonishing. It's almost become its own subgenre of creative output. Some interpretations meticulously try to match specific bronze features to supposed alien races or archetypes described in ufology. It's a creative and often visually fascinating exercise, a modern myth-making process in response to ancient mysteries. The Sanxingdui figures have become, in a way, the unofficial mascots for the global, were ancient civilizations way cooler, weirder, and possibly more cosmically connected than mainstream history books let on club. While the academic community largely debates the specific earthly cultural meanings and intricate symbolic systems behind Sanxingdui's unique iconography, often comparing them to other early belief systems, the public discourse frequently grapples with a more fundamental, almost visceral question does the profound otherness of these artifacts, their startling departure from what we consider normal ancient art, point towards inspirations entirely beyond our common understanding of ancient human capabilities and beliefs. It's this tension between scholarly interpretation and popular imagination that keeps Sanxingdui so alive, so debated, so endlessly fascinating. The artifacts themselves remain silent on this particular point, their bronze lips sealed, leaving us to gaze, to wonder, and to perhaps feel a little thrill at the sheer, delightful weirdness of it all, whatever its ultimate source. So, we've dipped our toes into the more cosmic end of the Sanxingdui theory pool, the one with the little green floaties and the faint smell of rocket fuel. It's undeniably fun. It's imaginative. And those Sanxingdui Bronzes certainly provide enough visual ambiguity to let the mind wander to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. But now, let's put on our slightly more serious, though still exceptionally comfy for bedtime listening, thinking caps, and try to weigh the evidence. How do we discern what tangible proof supports the mainstream understanding of Sanxingdui versus these more fantastical conjectures? It's a bit like being a detective at a very, very old and very strange crime scene, where the witnesses only speak in bronze. First, let's consider what archaeologists generally count as evidence. It's not just about how weird something looks. Tangible artifacts are primarily those masks, heads, trees, jades, and gold foils you've been picturing. Their materials are analyzed. Is it earthly bronze or some mystery alloy spoiler? It's earthly. The context of their discovery is crucial. Were they found in a tomb, a temple, a workshop, or, as at Sanxingdui, in meticulously prepared sacrificial pits? Then there's comparative analysis. How do these finds stack up against what we know from other ancient cultures? Both nearby and far away, are there parallels in style, symbolism, or technology? Later, textual sources, like those somewhat hazy shoe legends we mentioned, can offer clues, but they have to be used with extreme caution, like handling ancient, fragile glass. And, of course, scientific analysis like carbon dating helps place things in time, and material sourcing can tell us where the copper and tin for the bronze, or the ivory, might have come from. Now, let's look at the mainstream theories, that Sanxingdui represents a unique human culture, likely the Shu Kingdom, with its own complex system of beliefs, rituals, and artistic expressions. What's the evidence here? Those famously protruding eyes, for instance. While startling, they find a potential, if anachronistic, echo in later textual descriptions of the Shu king Kangkong. More broadly, exaggerated or symbolic eyes are not uncommon in religious or shamanistic art worldwide, often signifying spiritual sight, divine power, or a trance state. They are an artistic convention, a way of representing an idea, not necessarily a literal depiction of a non-human eyeball. The incredible bronze casting technology, while highly advanced and producing unique styles, falls within the known spectrum of Bronze Age human capabilities. The methods, like piece mold casting, were known in China, though the Sanxingdui artisans took them in their own spectacular direction. The ritual sacrifice of valuable objects, again, a widespread human practice, seen in many cultures from the Celts to the Maya, usually tied to appeasing gods, displaying power, or marking significant transitions. Even the bizarre animal and hybrid figures have parallels in the mythologies of countless human societies, where dragons, sphinxes, and myriad other chimerical beings populate spiritual landscapes. This is a key historical fact. Archaeological interpretations of Sanxingdui primarily rely on this kind of contextual analysis of artifacts, comparative studies with other ancient cultures, and cautious use of later textual sources. While the artistic style is strikingly unique, the materials used, bronze, gold, jade, ivory, and the underlying manufacturing techniques are consistent with sophisticated Bronze Age human capabilities, offering no direct physical evidence of non-human technology or extraterrestrial intervention. So, what about the evidence for more fantastical conjectures, like ancient alien visitors? This often rests on a different kind of logic. It tends to be an argument from personal incredulity, or an appeal to the unexplained. This is so strange, so unlike anything I've seen. It must be non-human. Or, we don't know exactly what this means, therefore it could mean aliens. The evidence is often the perceived anomaly itself, the sheer visual otherness of the Sanxingdui artifacts. But here's the thing. Human creativity is vast and astonishingly diverse. What seems alien to one culture might be perfectly normal or deeply symbolic to another. If they were aliens, they were remarkably tidy visitors. No discarded ray guns found alongside the Jade B discs. No Kilroy was here, inscribed in Alpha Centaurian on the sacrificial pit walls. No unidentifiable alloys in those magnificent bronzes. Occam's razor, a useful principle, basically suggests that if you hear hoof beats, you should probably think horses, not zebras, or in this case, think incredibly inventive ancient humans with a unique worldview, not necessarily little green men stopping by to offer artistic advice. This doesn't mean the Sanxingdui finds aren't profoundly strange and deeply mysterious. They absolutely are. That's their magic. But strange doesn't automatically equal extraterrestrial. It often equals human culture we don't fully understand yet. Here's a quirky tidbit related to how these interpretations are formed a common tactic in arguments for ancient alien influence, not just for Sanxingdui but for many ancient sites, is to present an ancient artifact next to a modern pop culture image of an alien and exclaim, "Look, they're the same." This is often a classic case of pareidolia, seeing patterns or familiar shapes in random stimuli, or confirmation bias seeking out information that confirms pre-existing beliefs. It's like seeing a face in the clouds. It can be fun, and the cloud might even look remarkably like your Uncle Bob, but it's not rigorous proof that Uncle Bob is currently a cumulonimbus. While scholars largely agree on the human origin and ritualistic nature of Sanxingdui artifacts, the debate continues regarding the specific sources of their unique artistic inspiration, whether it was a purely indigenous development that flowered in the fertile Sichuan basin, or if it was significantly influenced by sustained interactions with other contemporary Chinese Bronze Age cultures like the Shang, or perhaps even shows faint, tantalizing traces of more distant contacts with cultures in Southeast Asia or across the Eurasian steppes. This is where the real, grounded archaeological debate lies, in tracing the complex web of human interactions and indigenous creativity that led to this astonishing cultural explosion. Honestly, sometimes human beings, with their bizarre beliefs, their incredible art, and their capacity for both profound wisdom and utter weirdness, are far more wonderful and complex than any stock alien from central casting. We invented the spork and reality television. After all, our capacity for the strange is practically limitless. The Sanxingdui people were, above all, human, and their legacy is a testament to just how extraordinary human imagination can be. So, we've explored the idea that the marvels of Sanxingdui are almost certainly the product of human hands and human minds, exceptionally creative, deeply spiritual, and perhaps, let's be honest, a little delightfully eccentric human minds at that. We've weighed the evidence, poked a bit of gentle fun at some of the more out-there theories, and generally agreed that these ancient Sichuan artisans were playing in a league of their own. But this very uniqueness, this startling departure from what we might consider typical Bronze Age Chinese art, begs a fascinating question. How does Sanxingdui fit into the grand, sprawling, often bewildering tapestry of ancient civilizations worldwide. Is it a complete one-off, a cultural island, or does it share a certain enigmatic kinship with other lost worlds that continue to puzzle and captivate us? First, let's just re-emphasize how truly distinct Sanxingdui is. Those arresting bronze masks with their geometric precision and varied eye treatments, the towering spirit trees teeming with symbolic life, the slender, elongated figures standing in solemn dignity, the sheer scale and drama of those sacrificial pits. There's no exact blueprint for this anywhere else. You can't just point to another culture and say, "Ah, yes, Sanxingdui is clearly version 2.0 of that." They were innovators, marching to the beat of their own very ancient, very bronze drum. Their artistic language, once you begin to recognize its vocabulary of forms, is unmistakably their own. It's like there was an ancient global club for civilizations that will really mess with future archaeologists' heads. And Sanxingdui wasn't just a charter member, they probably designed their weird, awesome logo. Yet, while its specific artistic expressions are unique, Sanxingdui does share certain characteristics, certain auras, with other mysterious ancient cultures scattered across the globe. Think about other lost civilizations that seem to burst onto the archaeological scene with a high degree of sophistication, only to decline or transform in ways that aren't fully understood. The Indus Valley civilization, with its well-planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, its undeciphered script, and its eventual enigmatic decline, comes to mind. Or consider the Olmecs of Mesoamerica, often called the mother culture of later civilizations like the Maya and Aztec, who left behind those colossal stone heads with their brooding expressions. Another monumental artistic tradition whose full meaning and societal context are still debated. Sanxingdui, with its advanced bronze work and its own mysterious end or relocation, shares that sense of being a brilliant but partially obscured chapter in human history. Then, there's the sheer impact of their monumental art and the effort it implies. When you look at the Sanxingdui Bronzes, you feel a similar sense of awe and questioning as when you contemplate the giant moai statues of Rapa Nui, Easter Island, staring out to sea, or the vast enigmatic Nazca lines etched into the Peruvian desert. The materials are different, the forms are different, but the underlying human impulse to create on a grand scale, to pour immense resources into objects or earthworks that clearly had profound cultural or religious significance, is a shared thread. We look at these places, and our brains just kind of go, "Ooh, shiny and massive," and I have no idea what that was truly for. I love it. Sanxingdui also finds itself in the company of other ancient cultures that possessed a rich material life, but whose textual voice is either silent or speaks in a language we haven't yet learned to understand. We talked about Sanxingdui's lack of a contemporary deciphered script. Think of Minoan Crete, with its beautiful palaces and vibrant frescoes, but whose linear A script remains largely unread, leaving so many questions about the specifics of their society and beliefs. These cultures speak primarily through their art, their architecture, and their ritual remains, forcing us to become interpreters of a visual, symbolic language. This is a crucial shared aspect, and it's a primary reason why Sanxingdui is considered such a global enigma. This combination of advanced social complexity and artistic production alongside limited or undeciphered textual evidence makes its interpretation heavily reliant on archaeology and inference. And while the specifics of Sanxingdui's sacrificial pits are unique, the sheer quantity and type of bronze, gold, jade, and ivory objects, all deliberately broken and buried, the general concept of complex ritual landscapes and sacrificial practices is certainly not exclusive to them. From the bog bodies and offerings of Celtic Europe to the elaborate ceremonies of the Maya, Humans across time and space have engaged in intricate rituals to mediate their relationship with the cosmos, the gods, and the cycles of life and death. Sanxingdui's version was just particularly spectacular and left behind an unusually durable, if puzzling, material record. What makes a culture a global enigma like Sanxingdui? It usually involves that potent combination, a high degree of artistic or technological sophistication that surprises us, unique expressions that don't quite fit into pre-existing historical narratives, and key aspects of their belief system, social structure, or history remaining tantalizingly obscure. They often feel like they're operating on a slightly different wavelength from their more well-documented contemporaries. Here's a quirky little tidbit for you. You'll often see maps online or in certain kinds of books where people have drawn lines connecting various mystery spots around the world. Say, from the pyramids of Giza to Stonehenge, then over to Teotihuacan, across to Sanxingdui, and maybe down to Nan Madol in Micronesia. The implication is often some kind of lost global supercivilization, ancient alien intervention, or a network of powerful ley lines. While there's generally no hard scientific evidence to support these grand unified theories of ancient weirdness, it does speak to a deep human desire to find interconnectedness, to see a grand pattern in these isolated pockets of profound mystery. If you draw enough lines with enough enthusiasm, eventually everything connects. I once connected my toaster to the global financial markets with a complicated flowchart and some very optimistic assumptions. It didn't make me rich, but it was an interesting afternoon. The extent to which Sanxingdui's apparent cultural isolation and unique trajectory were absolute versus being a product of incomplete archaeological records or even our own biases in understanding ancient interaction spheres is keenly debated. Further discoveries, particularly in the wider Sichuan region or along potential trade routes, may yet reveal more subtle connections to other cultures, or they might further emphasize its remarkable indigenous brilliance and self-contained development. It stands as a powerful reminder that the story of human civilization is far richer, far more diverse, and far more wonderfully strange than we often imagine. Sanxingdui isn't just a Chinese mystery, it's a global one, a testament to a lost world that continues to challenge and enchant us all. So, Sanxingdui takes its proud, if rather perplexing, place in the grand, hushed museum of global enigmas, those ancient cultures that whisper to us across the millennia with a voice we can't quite make out, yet find utterly, irresistibly compelling. You've journeyed with me through its imagined rituals, gazed upon its startling artistic creations, and pondered its silences. But what is it, truly, about these particular bronzes from the Sichuan basin, these specters of a lost Shu kingdom, that continues to exert such a powerful gravitational pull on our modern imagination, drawing us back again and again to their silent, metallic faces? I think, in part, it's the sheer, unadulterated audacity of their art, those masks with their otherworldly eyes, the impossibly tall and slender figures, the monumental spirit trees teeming with symbolic life. They are so visually arresting, so unapologetically different, that they bypass our rational minds and speak directly to something older, something more intuitive. They don't politely ask for your attention. They seize it with both of their oversized bronze hands. They are beautiful, yes, but it's a strange, demanding beauty, one that challenges our preconceptions of what ancient art, particularly ancient Chinese art, is supposed to look like. Trying to get a complete, definitive picture of Sanxingdui from the fragments we have is like trying to assemble a colossal jigsaw puzzle where most of the pieces are still buried. Some are shaped like those enigmatic bronze faces, and the box it came in has no guiding picture, just a very cryptic symbol. Then there's that profound silence we've talked about, the absence of their own written words to explain themselves, this lack of a clear narrative, of an ancient voice telling us this is who we were, this is what we believed, creates an irresistible vacuum. And human imagination, as we know, abhors a vacuum. We are, at our core, story-making creatures. When the original story is lost, we can't help but try to write our own, projecting our own hopes, fears, and modern sensibilities onto these ancient forms. Sanxingdui becomes a Rorschach test in bronze and gold, reflecting back our own fascination with mystery, with power, with the spiritual, and yes, sometimes, with visitors from other worlds. The dramatic nature of their apparent end, or at least the end of this particular ritualistic chapter, those pits filled with deliberately broken, burned, and buried treasures, adds another layer of poignant mystery. It speaks of crisis, of transformation, of a people making a profound and costly statement. Were they saying goodbye to their gods, to their way of life? Were they hiding their treasures from an impending threat, or ritually sending them into the spirit world to accompany a dying age? We don't know, and that not knowing is a powerful hook. It's the ultimate historical cliffhanger, and we're all still eagerly awaiting the next installment, or perhaps the next excavated pit, to see if it sheds a little more light. And speaking of new discoveries, that's another vital part of Sanxingdui's enduring allure. The story is still actively unfolding. This is a key mainstream historical fact. The ongoing archaeological work at Sanxingdui continues to be astonishingly fruitful. Between 2019 and 2022, for instance, 6 more sacrificial pits numbered 3 through 8 were discovered and excavated, yielding thousands more artifacts, more bronze masks, mythical creatures, jade tools, gold fragments, and even remnants of silk. It's like Sanxingdui is the gift that keeps on giving. Really, really strange, beautiful, and incredibly significant gifts that make archaeologists joyfully tear their hair out trying to understand it all. Each new find adds another piece to the puzzle, sometimes clarifying earlier theories, sometimes complicating them wonderfully, ensuring that Sanxingdui remains a dynamic, evolving field of research, not just a static collection of old objects. This ongoing sense of discovery keeps the enigma alive and breathing. It's not just a cold case from 3,000 years ago, it's an active investigation, and we, the public, get to watch and wonder as new clues emerge. Here's a quirky little tidbit. The Sanxingdui Museum, located near the archaeological site in Guanghan, has become a major cultural landmark and tourist destination. And the iconic imagery of the artifacts has permeated modern Chinese culture, inspiring contemporary art, fashion designs, video games, and countless fictional narratives. These ancient figures have become modern celebrities, their mysterious backstory only adding to their fame. They're not just relics, they're icons of a deep, enigmatic past that still resonates powerfully today. Ultimately, whether the Sanxingdui civilization will ever yield definitive, unambiguous answers to its most profound riddles, the precise meaning of every symbol, the full pantheon of its gods, the exact reasons for its dramatic ritual sacrifices, or if its primary legacy will forever remain its extraordinary power to provoke wonder, to challenge our assumptions, and to inspire an endless stream of diverse interpretations, is a question that perhaps only future generations of researchers, armed with new technologies and new perspectives, and perhaps future generations of dreamers, captivated by its timeless mystery, will be able to address. For now, Sanxingdui remains a beautiful, haunting question mark etched in bronze and gold, a testament to a lost world whose echoes still ripple through our own. It reminds us that the past is not always a neat, well-ordered story, but sometimes a collection of stunning, bewildering fragments that invite us not just to study, but to dream. And so, as the echoes of those ancient Sanxingdui rituals begin to fade, and the images of bronze faces and towering spirit trees soften at the edges of your mind, allow yourself to drift. The mysteries of this lost world, the unanswered questions, the silent stories held within the earth for over 3 millennia, they can rest now, just as you prepare to rest. There is a strange comfort, perhaps, in knowing that not everything can be easily explained, that some enigmas endure, inviting contemplation rather than demanding immediate comprehension. The gentle weight of their ancient secrets can be a surprisingly soothing blanket. Imagine the Sichuan basin as it is tonight, the moon casting its soft glow over the fields where those farmers once stumbled upon jade, where archaeologists later unearthed a civilization beyond their wildest imaginings. The earth there still holds so much, sleeping beneath layers of time. But for tonight, your journey through its most perplexing treasures is complete. The spirits of Sanxingdui, whether they were kings, shamans, or beings from even further afield, have shared a glimpse of their world, and now they recede back into the quiet mists of history. Let the cadence of this story slow, like soft footfalls departing a sacred, now peaceful, sight. The need to understand, to decipher, can be laid aside for the night. What remains is the sense of wonder, the faint, lingering scent of ancient incense, the soft gleam of patinated bronze in the deep well of your memory. Allow these sensations to become a gentle lullaby, carrying you toward a peaceful and untroubled sleep, where, perhaps, in your own dreams, some of those silent faces might finally whisper a secret or two, or perhaps simply smile.